Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. We got big news from the NFL. They are rescheduling the Hall of Fame game from last year, keeping the matchup between the Steelers and the Cowboys, and just playing it this year. I believe there's only one game, but they are actually having two ceremonies. So they're separating the Hall of Fame inductees. They're going to have the first day, they're going to celebrate the ones that should have been honored last year, which for the Steelers include, let's go through it. So they have Troy Polamalu, Bill Cowher, Donnie Shell inducted on Saturday. And then on Sunday, they get the new members, Alan Faneca and Bill Nunn. So they're going to play in the game, and they're also going to have 5 new Hall of Fame members, which I thought was outrageous. They're playing the Cowboys. The Cowboys are getting in Jimmy Johnson and Cliff Harris on Saturday, and then they're also getting one more, Drew Pearson, on Sunday. So they're getting 3 too. So it should be a great matchup, and I think that's probably why the NFL decided to keep it with them, because I wasn't sure if they were going to change it completely or do whatever. I mean, the entire new class, because I believe we talked about last year's class last year. So they have Tom Flores, which we mentioned, a week or two ago, about how he wasn't in, and then he gets in. Calvin Johnson from the Lions basically followed the Barry Sanders playbook. Go there, you're an outrageous player on a poor team, maybe poorly run, we don't know. Just retire early and leave the franchise on bad blood. And now they're trying to open communications, which I think is interesting because out of all the guys, he's definitely the youngest. I think the other 3, John Lynch, Peyton Manning, and Charles Woodson, along with the Steelers and Cowboys guys, those guys are all from the same era. I think they were big in the early 2000s all the way through. Then they stuck around for long careers. Calvin Johnson came in later, didn't play as long, and so he's eligible in the same class as guys that were playing in college in 1998 or 1990. What Charles Woodson won the Heisman in 1997. Maybe that's when they came out. So technically, the Rose Bowl is 1998. That's probably what I was thinking. So crazy. I think it's pretty easy. I don't think there's any surprises there. I mean, what did you think? Peyton Manning wasn't going to go ahead and get inducted? But what are your thoughts on the class, Matt?
Overall, I thought it was a pretty good class. And I was actually surprised for as long as it's taken for Faneca to get in that he's finally going to get his nod, because he played outstanding for Pittsburgh, and then he went on to the Jets and was successful, and I thought he was deserving.
Well, that was one of the ones that I brought in, and I think we both went through the stats of just the lineman comparison. I think when Hutchinson got in, and we went through, because was it Tony Baselli, which I don't even know was he even inducted yet? He was one of the ones that I know that we had on the Hall of Fame list because they weren't inducting linemen. So, of course, no, Baselli was one of the ones that got snubbed too. So I believe they put Hutchinson in, skipped over Faneca, Baselli, and a couple other guys, linemen, and just going through the accolades of Pro Bowls, how many years you played, just success in the league, you would have thought that Alan Faneca would have been in immediately. And the fact that it took him a few years, I think, was a shame. And it just shows you what the league is looking for. They want names that people know. They know Calvin Johnson, offensive guy, putting up big numbers. John Lynch, he's in the front office now. Peyton Manning has his own show on ESPN. Charles Woodson, I think, is he on ESPN or Fox? He's on one of them. So, you're getting in if you have a big name. Let's be honest. And I'm not trying to knock their careers. I mean, Charles Woodson, being a Michigan guy, he was outstanding. Heisman, the only defensive player in recent times to have won the Heisman. And then a Super Bowl champ with the Packers. I mean, Peyton Manning, a couple Super Bowls. He was like a leader, which I did with Peyton Manning. I wanted to bring something up because I saw where people were talking about hockey, like the NHL did like their top 100 players. And so my timeline was blown up because Malkin wasn't in. And people were posting his like outrageous season from like 2008 and 9 in points. And they're like, how's he not a top 100 player this year? And I was thinking, like, you're bringing up stats from years ago. It'd be like Peyton Manning coming into the league this year and people complaining that he's not a top 5 quarterback. Like, just because you're a great name and you used to have great seasons, you can't just stick around forever. I mean, that's exactly what it reminded me of. Like the old Peyton Manning years when he would somehow still make the Pro Bowl. And it was like, have you seen him throw the ball? Like, he's making good reads. He's accurate, but I don't know if that's Pro Bowl material. And so, like, I saw the Malkin snub, and who even cares about the NHL's top 100 players? But that's what, as I was going through my show notes, I was like, I have to mention it. Because I don't know why people are so upset. It's not like Malkin's playing good anyway. You would think that the Penguins could just trade him, and it wouldn't be a loss. So, quit living in the past. Anything else you got on the Hall of Fame stuff, Matt?
Well said.
Let's see. So after the Hall of Fame, I'm thinking that the NFL's set to have fans in the stands because I know a lot of the colleges in Michigan sent out their season ticket renewals. Some of the ones down here, NC State put out their waiver. They're not sure 100% how many people they're going to let into the game, but they want to get interest. And so I'm thinking that the NFL is going to expand. At least I hope the Steelers can go ahead and start to get those sent out soon since colleges are going underway and you can have fans in the stands. I think it was a big draw against, I don't want to say the Super Bowl, but I did have a stat that I brought up from Sports Illustrated that I thought was interesting. So we talked about the viewership for the Super Bowl Hall dropped to 92 million or something. They watched it, and everyone's talking about how they're dying, dead in the water. Out of all the major sports, they only dropped 9%. And it's not even that big of a drop compared to the others. Baseball was 30% drop. Basketball was 49% drop in viewership. And the NHL was 61%. So a 9% drop in a pandemic year where there's no fans allowed is just crazy to me. I would think that maybe more people would have watched TV, but you also don't know how many people just don't have that luxury anymore because it is just an entertainment thing. So I wanted to bring that up because I know a lot of people were like, oh, the NFL, it's dying just like the others. Like getting near the 50 and 60 range where the NBA and NHL is, that's dangerous territory where you're losing almost half your fans. And I would say that those two were up against football when they normally aren't. So let's see what those numbers look like this spring. Are they still dropped? Are they on a rebound? Because that might show good numbers going for football next year. I mean, the college national championship also dropped. They don't have the percentage here. But I don't know. It definitely wasn't a 50% drop because we talked about it on the show. Did you see the fan-controlled football league?
I did.
What do you think of that?
I had meant to message you about it and wanted. It was just one of those like I had heard about it. I knew it was coming up, and I just kind of forgot about it. To be honest, I saw Manziel's playing in it now.
But is he playing in it? Because that was going to be my next question. He had like 4 attempts. Like the game's not 10 plays long, so it's not like he played half the game.
Maybe he just handed the ball off.
He said, no, he had a big run. So out of like the 4 plays he played, one of them was a big run where he almost scored. And he said, out there playing with those guys, I feel like I'm washed up. Like he's only a couple years removed from the league. So maybe it's guys that need to be focused because I had talked about with the AAF and like some of them, the XFL making their things. I thought Maybe they should go after big ex-Heisman quarterbacks. Maybe they wash up faster than you would expect. I don't know. You would think Johnny Manziel would be able to come in and at least, I guess he's probably not working out. He did say win or lose, he will booze. So he didn't even care. So I'm guessing that he is not in tip-top shape, and that's why he feels like he's washed up out there. But I just thought it was interesting, like the fan-controlled league, so the fans are out there and they're in charge of everything. Just strange. And I'm surprised that it didn't get more publicity. I honestly think they only invited Manziel because they knew the press would eat it up for whatever reason.
But I think one of the things that's kind of interesting that I read about it was that it takes your play calls into consideration. So like if you're like putting in your play calls and they're working, then as the game progresses, like statistically, you become like your calls end up having more weight. So like if you're just calling a bunch of really dumb plays and they're not working, then your pull within the team isn't as strong.
So you could get in on that and put that on your resume?
I'm sure if you wanted to put it on your resume, you put anything on your resume.
You just put on there like, hey, I called a 79-yard run for Johnny Manziel in the Fake It True Football League. Check that out. Here's a tidbit of it. And just post a little image on like LinkedIn of him running. Like, I called that play. And then you call up the Steelers and you say, hey, I know Ben calls most of the plays here, but if you're looking for an offensive coordinator, I did call this one play. Almost scored. Almost scored a touchdown. Holy crap, that would have been like a 50-yard run. I don't even know how long the field was. Well, they were playing in the short field, so I wasn't 100% sure. It was almost like arena football.
On a short field.
Well, arena football's dead, so this is like the next evolution of it. But honestly, I honestly think that if they did like regional tournament, like almost 7-on-7s, you would get more interest. Because then like the casual man could play and then bet on teams or whatever. You know what I mean? I always wondered why they didn't try to do that more. Or like do like more of a regional like sports league where you know that there are cities, like how the NFL formed, that are close enough and the people hate each other. Obviously, with coronavirus shutting everything down, probably not the best year for it. But I'm always an advocate of get teams that are close enough that even if it's not a major city, like right where I am, you could do a Raleigh team and a Durham team and play twice a year and then start a big rivalry. And also play like Charlotte and then maybe somewhere in South Carolina and have those two be rivals. And then that's your division. And then you'd meet like some teams from Pittsburgh or Virginia or wherever for a playoffs. And then maybe if you have like the local teams that get some interest, then other kids that they play high school, maybe don't play college, have a place to go. And I think that would be a little bit more successful if you're not like an XFL type thing. And I'm always surprised at the Arena Football League, when I say AFL, that they didn't try to go that route by just having more franchises, because they really didn't have a big roster. They only played with 3 linemen anyway. So
what was that one league that was the flag league?
The lingerie football league?
No, not the lingerie league. They wear equipment in that one.
I don't know.
There was one of the leagues. It was like it was a flag where they had NFL teams on one side and like competitive, like amateurs on the other, and like the Super Bowl type game ended up being where the like flag team, like the amateurs, crushed the professionals.
I think I know what you're talking about, and that could be another thing. Go the flag football route. I just don't think flag football is as exciting for the fan.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you just did like a rugby style and didn't even have the pads, and you did football rules, because like a lot of guys, like let's be honest, they're gonna run out of bounds. Like you're not gonna take hits. Even in the NFL, they're like, yeah, you know what? I could fight for 5 more yards, but we're not fighting. If you watch college, they're fighting for the extra yards. But in the NFL, they don't care. So in another lower league past that point, they're not caring enough either. Like they're going to live to run another play. So there are some other concerns, or not even concerns, but just directions that football could go in the future as people try to get out of like the concussion focus and everything like that. So I would like to see something like that come out. That reminds me of like the big three for basketball, where they have that. And they also have that tournament for college basketball players too, where it's like a big tournament where they have a chance to win like $1 million or whatever. And it's like old college players get together. And so that's another route too, that some of the football ones, if they're looking for football to fill some of this gap, why not? But I'm sure The Rock's going to take the XFL in more of the traditional football league, and we'll see if it can be successful. I think it's going to kick off next year, is the last thing I heard on it. So anything else you have random on that stuff before we get into other NFL talk?
No.
All right, the big story from the NFL, J.J. Watt asked the Texans to release him. He waited till they picked their coach, so he obviously thinks that they're in for a rebuild, because you don't just, as a player, you're not just going to go ahead and ask for a release without talking to the new coach. And so I honestly think that Deshaun Watson is going to be moved no matter what. And I think J.J. Watt knows that. And they just said, let's get the contract off the books and let's go. I mean, that franchise, they're a shell of their former self now. Like they had some big time players just a few years ago, some bad trades, and now bad contracts. And like, where are they now? Like their team is going to be a mess. So as a new coach coming in, like that couldn't have been a attractive job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's one of those you're in deep crap.
I mean, think him coming in and thinking, all right, I'm going to have Deshaun Watson. I'm going to have like J.J. Watt. We have some big star pieces that we're going to keep around. And then immediately both of them are like, no, we're out. And I know Watson's still there right now, but like J.J. Watt, that's a big time move. They're talking about the Steelers are trying to convince J.J. Watt to sign with them. The Steelers don't have any cap room. If they bring back Ben, then they're going to have to cut. I mean, I went through the list last week, but like Juju Smith-Schuster, he's on the free agent list, and he's one of the ones that's trying to push for JJ to come. It's like, are they going to sign you? I would hope if the Steelers sign him, they don't offer him a big-time contract because he hasn't earned it. Ben's going to have to redo his, and I said there were a couple other veterans that might have to redo their contract just to get under the cap. And so they're not going to have money to swing a J.J. Watt type signing, although it would be nice if he signed low just to sign with the Steelers. And then they made some moves. Like, I mean, Bud Dupree, he's up for like free agency. And if you're going to spend the money at that point, why not just sign J.J. Watt? If I'm being honest, what are your thoughts on that?
I have mixed feelings. Like I think it would be cool from the standpoint of he would be playing with his brothers. I think like that would be an interesting dynamic. However, I don't know bringing him in moves the needle enough, sadly, to get the organization going where they need to be.
Well, like I said, if they could swing something where they're letting Dupree go, and that dynamic playing alongside your brother pumps up the defense and gets them playing at a high level, which they're also going to get Devin Bush back. And they're going to have their other linebackers come back too. So the defense is going to be more, I mean, they were pretty injured at the end of the year. So if you're flipping Dupree for Watt, I mean, that's a no-brainer. I think you would take J.J. Watt. And if you can get him for the same contract, at that point I would say go for it. But I really, like you said, that's not really a position of need. You still need a run game. I don't know if you need linemen to get that changed, if it's a philosophy with Ben. But let's say you cut Ben or trade him, sign J.J. Watt, and then who's leading the team? You have Haskins,
Well,
uh, Rudolph, and who else? Dobbs still?
yeah.
Not a good look. Who did you say?
You were saying about potentially trading Ben. Do you, how, who would be crazy enough at this stage of the game to take Roethlisberger on? Where, like he truly would be a 1 to 2 year loner.
I'm telling you, Washington. It came out that Washington had a much better deal for Stafford, but for whatever reason, they liked Goff, and so they wanted Goff in return. Like they didn't want the picks. Like they were like, yeah, we don't want the picks or like the money or whatever. We were trying to get Goff here, and so they took the worst deal to get Goff in that deal. But Washington was ready to make that move for a quarterback, and why not Ben for them? They were in the playoffs. They're in a weak division. So even if Ben has his injuries or whatever, they have the luxury of sitting him out. The Steelers didn't really have that luxury this year, as much as I kept pushing for it, because the Ravens and the Browns were both two of the top leagues in the AFC in their division. You had to play them twice. So it's like the division's rough as it is. The way the schedule shook out, you didn't have the luxury of sitting him. The Redskins, however, could lose like 9 games and still win their division. And so you're like, okay, if Ben comes here and he's hurt, we can just go with our other backups for a while and see what happens. And then when he comes back, boom, they got a chance. I mean, depending on how Dak Prescott is when he comes back, Ben would arguably be the best quarterback in that division. Yeah, I mean, you have a debate in the division right now, the AFC North, with Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson, which way that's going. I mean, Ben hasn't really shown anything in the playoffs enough to say, like, hey, that's our guy. I know the other two really haven't either, but Baker looked much better in the playoffs than what Ben did. I mean, they should have beat the Chiefs. They had a couple of bad calls against them. Like the fumble shouldn't have been a fumble. That was a helmet-to-helmet hit. I don't know if that would have been enough to change the game. But, I mean, that's crazy how much he's turned around with that team. So, at this point, I don't care either way. Like, what's the difference? What's the difference if Ben plays and they get 10 wins and are eliminated the first round of the playoffs? Or if they just play someone else and maybe slip in as the last seed and lose the first round anyway? Like, what is the difference?
Yeah, there really isn't much.
So, I mean, maybe you can think, all right, we can sign Ben. Haskins can learn from him. But Ben hasn't shown to be that type of quarterback. So does it even matter? I don't know. I mean, the other team that was looking for a loaner would have been the 49ers. They had a lot of injuries too last year. Maybe you can move him and bring in Garoppolo, but I don't know how big of a long-term solution that is or what his contract deal is. Those are the other teams that I would think of. I mean, you have other ones, like I said, that might be able to make a deal. Like the Jets are looking to move pieces. They might want a veteran guy to have their rookie quarterback learn under. But again, Ben hasn't shown to be that guy. So why would someone risk it to have him come in and then just not care? And would he even be willing to leave the Steelers? I don't know. He might just step away at that point. That's why we still have 2-3 more weeks before the season opens up. I think that's the big thing that everyone's waiting for, because nothing's going to happen before that, at least officially. So I don't know. A lot of people are still thinking that he could retire, but they're going through the process right now of the contract to see what they're able to do. But I don't know. Too many quarterbacks. So right now they're negative 25 million in cap space. If Ben leaves, they're down to like 11 million over the cap. So like, do you just get rid of some guys? That's where like Juju gone. I don't know what contract they'd be signed with him, but gone. Honestly, I'd be like, yeah, that's not even a debate. Good luck out there. But we'll see how it shakes out. Do you have anything else on contract stuff?
No, I just think Pittsburgh's in a place right now where to me it almost reminds me of like where the Penguins are at, where like you're still hanging on to times where you're making the playoffs, but do you have enough to get you over the hump and get you a championship? And it's like we're good enough right now to be a playoff qualifying team, but I don't know that you have the firepower to get you to the championship.
And that's exactly how it is.
And maybe it's just getting the defense back and healthy that is enough to win them over, and just do it the typical Pittsburgh way where you play defense and you score just enough points to get by.
But that's where it would be so big to just have a solid running back. And I don't even know if they would be able to. I mean, I'm picking late in the first round. You're not going to be able to get a guy that's cheap to come in and just make an impact. Like that's why it still hurts that they didn't sign Fournette last year, because it seemed like you can get him for cheap. I don't know what the Bucs actually ended up signing him for, but I mean, bringing in some of the other guys is like, okay, cool. You had enough money to bring in Haskins for whatever they signed him for, but I just don't know. It looks like they were talking. I'm trying to find a salary here, and it says that Bruce Arians told Fournette that he needs to either embrace his role or they're going to cut him. It was $2 million they signed him for. So I just don't know. Like that would have been a good deal for the Steelers. Just bring a guy in, see if you can turn him around. The Haskins deal is under $1 million, so it's only $850,000. So it's probably not bad for a gamble to see what happens.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that it was around the same, like $1 million or $2 million. So we'll see what happens. The contract's going to be the big thing, and that's what we're going to have to go back to. I did have one more NFL topic. Urban Meyer hired Chris Doyle, I think that's who it was, from the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, he hired him as his strength coach, and then Chris Doyle resigns. Now, there's been a lot of like heat around him. I was trying to find out how long he's actually been at Iowa, but he was there for the longest time. So the controversy with him, they said that he was accused of making like racist comments or whatever, but his controversy goes back even further than that. Like Iowa had an issue, I don't know if it was like a decade ago, where they were under investigation because a lot of their guys got sick for doing like, what was it, a crazy squat workout or something, where they got like rhabdomyosin. I think that's what it's called, although I'm no doctor, so if I mispronounce that, you can look it up. But it's basically where you're under such fatigue that your body is like dying. And so they were like, I don't know if they were urinating blood or whatever, but that's how they realized that they had something wrong. And it was like multiple people in the Iowa program that then had to go through like a hospital process because of like their strength workouts were so crazy. And so there's multiple players talking about just like the bullying aspects and how he belittled them and basically just pushing them to crazy levels. And so Urban Meyer comes out and says, hey, I've personally vetted him. It's like, didn't you just step away from Ohio State because you had personnel issues there. Like, it's not like he's a beacon of great judgment, Matt. So I was almost like, first off, I know a lot of people were messaging me, making fun because I said that Urban Meyer, I would like if he came to Michigan, and I still stand with that. I don't care. Come and win. I mean, obviously he made a bad hire. I think everyone knows that, and I'm just shocked that he made it. But that's the difference. He's focused so much on winning that he said this might give us one more win, and so it's worth the risk. And if it backfired, oh well. He's going to go ahead and get the next best guy. It reminds me of, like, we talked about the Tennessee program, like the Volunteers going for their head coach, how they had Greg Schiano, and then they let their fans like bully them out of that. And then they went back through there, and now they're under investigation with the coach that they ended up hiring. It's like, no. If you want to change your program, you have to just focus on winning and not care about that outside stuff. And that's what Urban Meyer is doing. And so he might get some heat, but he just doesn't care. I mean, at least now. He'll probably have a health issue, though, in a few years, don't you think, Matt?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like a crazy thing that it only took.
It might already be flaring up.
It was like a month and a half, right? When did he get hired there?
Yeah.
But Chris Doyle, I mean, that guy, I was surprised he even was considered for any other job.
Well, I was surprised that after Herb said that he personally vetted him, that he would find any kind of smudge on his record, because he has such a great track record of producing quarterbacks that get DUIs after he virtue signals how he would be a harsh disciplinarian, and how, like, I think it was like 2/3 of his one team was like, or a third of his championship team at Florida was arrested or has like police charges on him. Like, of course, he would just turn that blind eye to ethical and moral issues.
Anything to win. He is getting paid to win. So if you're an NFL fan of the Jaguars, you have to think, okay, maybe the program will turn around and focus on winning now. Now, are there going to be issues? Oh, 100%. Like, you're not going to be clean. Pete Carroll didn't build the USC program clean. I mean, let's be honest. USC has how many Heisman Trophy winners that don't have Heismans? And I'm not just talking about OJ. So, come on. Your boy, speaking of controversy, Dan Mullen, Matt, he's in the news today because he finally acknowledged that he made some regrettable comments last year, doubling down on fans in the stand during the pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
It doesn't surprise me.
Is it a Florida thing?
It's just what you come to expect from Dan.
But is it a Florida thing? Urban Meyer's having controversy already. Dan Mullen. Is it a statewide thing?
No, Mike Norvell's. He's just running a tight ship. We're just trying to get 1% better.
So spring practice is about to start. And it's not just for Florida. I know Michigan's starting, I think, this week too. So practices are about there. So he's doing like his press conference. And he says, a lot of rumors out there, but I didn't speak to anybody. And then he said, like, it just doesn't make any sense. And then he goes into coach speak where he loves the University of Florida and they have a great fan base and all this other stuff. And
please don't fire me for saying stupid things.
I mean, you would have to think that Florida's going to have a drop off, right?
One would think.
So, I mean, just looking at the way that it's set up with the SEC, that East Division though has to be getting easier. I mean, Georgia seems to just be choking every year. Tennessee's going through their thing, so they're going to drop off completely. South Carolina's going through a change. Like, who's going to compete in that division? So all Dan Mullen has to do is not say anything. Just don't say anything. Like, I don't understand it. So it's crazy that he's out there. But speaking of the SEC, our main college topic, Matt, UCF beats Auburn for a national championship. Then they go ahead and hire the coach they beat, Gus Malzahn. What do you think of this hire?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think UCF is one of the few programs that is going to come out smelling like a rose in this. That when Frost left UCF for Nebraska, they maintained that consistency with Heupel, but I think he was bringing in spread caliber people, so Malzahn can step in with his spread system, and he doesn't have to. He's not having to retool the offense like when, for example, when Florida State went from Jimbo to Taggart, they had to get a couple classes to recruit the spread guys he wanted. Like when Pitt went from Wannstedt to the guy whose name we can't say, Fraud Graham.
Graham. Why, he cracked me up.
There were times that, like, there was a period where the argument was made, well, I need to get my guys in. We're more built for pro style. That he can step right in. He can start with his system, and I think they have a chance to be competitive right off the bat. And with UCF, all they have to do is win out, and they can claim national championships.
Well,
how's that going?
Scott Frost, I mean, he got beat when he was in Auburn by a pretty poor Scott Frost coach. I mean, Scott Frost, he lost by 20 points to Illinois, man. Like, they're not good. He's barely won any games at Nebraska. So Malzahn's taking that over. And I would think that he's a better coach than Scott Frost at this point. He beats Alabama 20-something% of the time. So if he would come in, lead them to an undefeated season, and then beat Alabama, it's a possibility. It might take some crazy kicks that are returned for touchdowns at the last second, but I mean, it's been done before. So I think it's a great hire. I don't know what the problem was in the SEC. You could say that the talent was comparable, but I would say that some of the head-scratching games that they lost, Auburn had more talent, and they should have won. Like, they should have beat UCF that year, and they just didn't. And there were other games, like other bowl games and just other games that he just didn't have the team prepared to show up. And so with UCF, you're going to be the dog. Everyone's going to give you their best game. What are you going to do? Like, as top dog, you have to show up every game. And that's what I want to see from him. Because I think if he does that, it's a perfect landing spot for him to, A, redeem himself, and then B, put himself on a path to getting a better job if he wants it. Or, like we talked about before, I mean, why not just stay there? Like, you've shown you can win at Auburn. You were in a national championship game. People are going to respect you. If you were able to get UCF close, maybe because of that history that you've had, they put you in the playoffs. I think a lot of times when you have a newer coach come up through one of those programs, the media always twists it by saying, like, oh, they're just a younger program. They're not going to get into the playoffs. Don't worry. Like, we'll see this coach at a bigger program and he'll have a chance then. Like, they're not focusing on the players or the team. But now with him, it's like, look, I've been there. I know our team can compete. The media, they're not going to say anything. And so...
Well, the other thing that I thought, too, is that the pressure from Auburn is that, like, they were going in every year with the standard that they should be competing for national championships. And I don't know that they were recruiting on that high of a level that they were there. I mean, especially with your in-state rival being the team. Like, I know their recruiting classes were high-ish, but I mean, I don't know that you would say that when the preseason rankings and stuff come out, it wasn't like year in, year out, you're saying, oh, yeah, Auburn's competing for the SEC championship.
Well, I'm trying to look this up now because I know one of the things, like I figured it's easier just to find the blue chip ratio. So going back, it seems like he's right around the Michigan Penn State range. So for 2020, they were 59%. So he's right there tied with Michigan and Penn State, which is decent enough to compete, but you're still a good bit behind. Like you said, the Alabama's at 83%. That's a big time drop. Now, it used to be better. It's been falling off, and I think that's the thing that happened. Like a few years ago, he was at 58%, or that's 2019. But before that, they were much higher after that national championship year. I can't find the actual number. Let's see what it was. Like around 2016, unless I'm wrong. But because they didn't capitalize, what happened, they just fell off. So I'll see if I can find the actual number here while we're talking about it. Because normally it goes through like phases. And then after that, what's going to happen? And if you don't capitalize, you're going to start going down. You're going to start going down. And then eventually you're out. And I think that's where he found himself. Like they were looking at it and he didn't capitalize and make any progress from there. So like 2016, they were, what was it, ninth? I mean, he's ahead of Clemson, ahead of Georgia at that point. I don't know if that's the actual year. What year were they in the championship? 13?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the one where, it looks like you might not go back that far.
They won it in 10, and then they were there in 13.
Yeah, but he wasn't the coach in 10. That was a Gene Chizik coach.
Yeah, but he was the OC there.
True. I mean, he's always been right around, just looking back through, it doesn't go back as far as I thought it did right after that year. But around that, like he's still around the 60% ratio, usually right where Michigan is, and ahead of Clemson and other teams that were winning the national championship. So, I mean, he should be up there. Still a little bit behind LSU, so I'll give you that point, that it's not as high as what I thought it was, at least from what I could see here on my search. But I do know that they were landing like top 10 classes, and that's realistically all you need. They might have had the trouble with not having a quarterback, and if they're processing a lot of guys out, that's another big hit that they could be taking. But we'll see how the new coach does. What do you think, since I brought up Tennessee earlier, what do you think there? I thought that they should have just hired Gus Malzahn.
Oh, I think he was better suited for this fresh start with UCF. I don't know that going right back to Tennessee. I think that would have probably been an issue.
Why? I mean, I know they had the sanctions and stuff.
I mean, they had the sanctions, and I don't know. I can't put my, like, I don't know that with Phil Fulmer having his hand in that process, if it would have been a situation where he would have been handcuffed or something like that. I don't know. I just gut feeling.
But at some point, you have to turn your program over and say, this isn't working. And then look at Malzahn and see what he's done. And then take it to that next step and say, you know what? This guy has beaten Alabama. Tennessee considers him a rival. They know that they can't beat them. So why not see if he can get it done? I mean, circling back around to my Urban Meyer thing, like at some point you have to say, are we focused on being a football program? Or are you focused on running like a clean slate and just getting like a good program where players graduate and that's it. You might win a few games because I mean you can go after a big name coach, but you can't be surprised if they're making stupid decisions out there in terms of public optics and things like that. But you could also hire a good guy. Like I consider Mac Brown like that, where Texas is like, we have a good guy. He always seems like he's almost there. They get lucky the one year. The next time they're close, they had an injury. And it was like, all right. And then they were just like, we're tired of this. Let's try to get someone else in here that might take that next step. And then they haven't been able to replicate it. And that's why I'm surprised like Texas just didn't go after like a James Franklin or someone that would just shut down their state in recruiting and quit letting Oklahoma take their pick. I mean, realistically, you hire Steve Sarkisian. It's like, to me, that's not a big time hire. Could it work out? Yeah, it's Texas. But that's like saying any coach Michigan hires could work out. Could work out. Probably not. You don't know what the hell's going to happen. Because I figure Texas and Michigan have to be similar in terms of, oh, well, we're going to do some academic stuff and like all this other stuff. So let's focus on that. And meantime, we have these outrageously high expectations. And at some point, you have to have that trade-off. Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to put our resources in to building the program? Or are you just going to kind of hang out and see what happens? I mean, the NFL, the Steelers are the same right now. You said it perfect. They're kind of just floundering around. And you're at the point where, are you going to make some moves like the Buccaneers did to try to win a championship? Or are you going to keep doing the same old that you've been doing for the past 4 years and then have that shocked face when they lose in the playoffs again? Like sometimes, and it doesn't have to be a guy with a checkered past like Urban Meyer. Like I know he has a great winning percentage, but you can find other coaches to take a gamble. And like I would try to talk to Chris Peterson. Like I'm surprised. Like if I was Tennessee, that would have been my number one. He turned around Boise and had them at such a high level, and then he went to Washington and got them to the playoffs. Washington. I would have been like, look, you can have anything you want. Just come down to little old Tennessee and let's see what can happen. And that's why I thought like Auburn could do a move like that too. Because that would have elevated them to the next level, I think. But I think sometimes the boosters run these programs.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where you're not going to see anything change. I mean, Auburn was like, we need a guy that can just take our recruits and then hopefully we can get enough recruits that we can become Alabama. And I think that that's the play they went with. So we'll see if it works out. That's my college football spin.
Well, and one of the things that I've liked with Malzahn is that he hasn't tried to be Alabama. I think there's so many other teams that you try to mirror, mimic what Alabama's able to do, and it doesn't work because they have Alabama's pulling whoever they want in, and I applaud him for running his own system, his own scheme, and making it work for him.
And that's where, like I said, Auburn hired Brian Harsin from Boise, but it's like he didn't build that program. It's like, just go for the top dog. Go get the guy. Go get Peterson. He's not doing anything. I mean, like at that point, it's like I would have thrown anything that he wanted if I was Auburn and it'd just be like, let's go. Let's go get it. I mean, they lost Alabama in the Peach Bowl, but again, he was Washington. So, I don't know. He was only there for 6 years. Took him to the top. He's only 56. I mean, Nick Saban's like, what, 70-something now? Let's look that up. So he can't be there much longer. He's 69, so he's almost 70. And then Wow, just crazy. Anything else college football you want to talk about?
Nah.
I know we're getting into the off-season stuff, so probably be a slow period for a bit until the free agency moves start to really open back up for the NFL. Don't really have enough or much else to talk about. I did want to hit on some of the college basketball stuff. So Michigan came back after being forced to not play by like the state health rules because of like the coronavirus like contact. They had no player test positive, Matt. They come back on Sunday. They travel to Wisconsin. And you're talking about a top 3 team. I think every broadcast out there has them as a 1 seed heading into the tournament. They're down at halftime to Wisconsin, and one of the CBS guys, I know I've seen his face, and I know that he's tweeted at Southbound Sports before. Like he's come at us for something that we were talking about. Like in terms of college basketball, I think it was about the play-in games and how I thought they were bullshit or something. I can't remember, but he was laughing. He must hate Michigan or something because he was like, "Oh yeah, this Michigan team is definitely not a 1 seed. Look how bad they are." He's like, "I think they have to take into account um, that this layoff is really going to hurt them in terms of seeding." Of course, Michigan turned around and won almost by double digits. And I was just thinking, like, how many other programs right now are just bad throughout this year that I'm wondering if a lot of the media coverage is just going to be so slanted that it's going to be unbearable because they don't want other big football teams. I've called it the past couple years because I think that that's what's going to happen. You have football schools that make all the money, and college basketball, if football goes away, do you think those basketball schools are going to keep pulling in the big dogs? Hell no. If Auburn's going to outbooster Kentucky for football players, when football goes away, if it would, who do you think they're going to throw their money at next? It's not going to be the polo team, Matt. It's going to be the basketball team. And
Could
you've
be the
seen it with
defending national champs.
well, you've seen it with Auburn being close to not national championship. They've been taking deep runs. Texas Tech had a deep run. Michigan's had deep runs. Michigan and Ohio State are going to have a top 5 matchup. When is the last time Duke and UNC even had a combined ranked matchup in football? Like never. Like never. I mean, you might be able to look it up and find something back in the day, but let's be honest. Maybe the 90s. I know North Carolina had a run there at the end, and I don't even know if Duke would have had one. But if those schools, because all the basketball schools right now with this coronavirus year, they're in danger, I think, except for maybe Kansas, of missing the tournament. Even Michigan State's down, and they're looking awful. So you have Duke, North Carolina down, Michigan State down, Kentucky down. Then you have Indiana kind of flailing around in the middle of the Big Ten. Kansas is making their way back up. Maybe UCLA. But the rest of the league, or the rest of college basketball, is just becoming football schools. I mean, Florida State killed Virginia. Was it yesterday?
That's right. They did it in typical fashion. Start off really crappy, make it think like, oh, they're going to blow it again. And then they just hit the Jets.
Well, that's why when I'm looking at this, and you wonder, like, okay, let's take a look at the AP top 10, Matt. Let me just give you some of the teams that are ranked in the top 10, and you tell me what sport I'm talking about. Baylor, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Oklahoma.
Women's basketball.
You're talking men's basketball right now, which is crazy when you have the same schools that are being powerhouses in football that are now becoming like college basketball powerhouses. Like Michigan's made 2 national championships go through a coaching change. Everyone laughs them off, and now they look like they're playing better than they ever had under those other teams. And then like Alabama, consistently there. If you go to the next round, like the top 20, you have Iowa, Texas, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Florida State, USC, Virginia Tech, Tennessee. Like those aren't like you're not reading off a blue blood list of basketball schools. You'd have to go all the way to ranking 23rd to get Kansas. I mean, unless you're throwing in Villanova at 10, or if you're considering Gonzaga, which they don't play football. So if they did play football, they'd probably be the Boise State of the West, I would think. But man, I'm telling you, college football playoffs are bringing in so much money that the big schools that are able to recruit for college football, they're starting to come around to basketball recruiting. And I think you're going to see a major shift in college basketball. What do you think?
I think it's plausible. I mean, the one of the few benefits of being in a pandemic is that it seems like people are more willing to try different things. So maybe you end up seeing some different changes happening.
So you're thinking they're like, oh, I normally if it wasn't a pandemic, I would have went to Duke, but I'll try this Florida State thing out.
Well, no, they'll just see that they're already the defending national champions from last year, so they just be like, well, I want to go where the champions are.
Well, that's what I said. I'd be mad like if they canceled the whole tournament again, even though I don't think that's going to happen. But I still don't see the need to try to just fit it the entire like roster back out. Like some of the teams aren't deserving. Like if you're honestly talking about Duke and North Carolina being on the bubble, like stop. Like stop. Check yourself. Do whatever. But you can just pick the winners from each conference and then maybe fill it out and do like a 20 whatever team tournament, 32, if you want to get even. Like just go ahead and do that and have an actual tournament. I thought they should have did that last year, where I know a couple of the big name teams like Duke dropped out immediately, and then that kind of swung their favor. But this year, like Duke's saying, like we're not going to play in it, they're just going to laugh and be like, you weren't even in it. Like what are you talking about? We weren't even inviting you. Because I'm pretty sure if Duke was like, we're not in it, and Alabama and Oklahoma were like, hell yeah, we'll play. Because why wouldn't you? Because now you're at a point where if Alabama were to win a basketball national championship after winning all the football ones and you're a recruit, you're like, hell, I'll just go to Alabama. Like I know that they're winners there. And so I think that's where like a lot of these other basketball schools are like, they're probably secretly cheering for Gonzaga. Like, please just stay undefeated. Like, please, we don't want one of these football teams to start winning some natties and then we'll never hear about it. Because Alabama, you know how they are. They'll win one. They'll find 5 others to claim from 1930. And they'll be like, look at this. We have 6 national championships to celebrate this weekend. So that's my last thought. I think it's crazy. The NIT announced that they're going to have their tournament with 16 teams, but they're dropping the conference championship rule, which they used to have a rule where if you won the regular season, your regular conference championship, but you still missed the tournament, like for some of the smaller conferences, you would get an invite. But you know they're licking their chops to say, like, we're inviting whoever we want, and we're going to have a blue blood pity party. Like, I guarantee that 8-8 Duke and whatever North Carolina's, but they're better. They're 12-7. But you better believe that they're going to get that call for the NIT. Like, hey, you guys up for playing? Like, we can give you a big matchup. And so that's what I'm not looking forward to. But we'll see how it shakes out. You got anything else?
No, that's it.
I don't really have anything for the final bell. College basketball is going to be that for me. But like I said, you got a bunch of football programs that I said have been creeping up the past couple of years. And even like the Big Ten, like if the Big Ten they have so many teams in the top 4 rounds, or top 4 seeds, I mean, that if they don't win it this year, they better be losing to Gonzaga or Baylor. Like if they would let some other like lower seed sneak in, like a Houston not knocking them, but someone from a lower conference winning national championship instead of the Big Ten, then they have problems. So that's my last thing. And I would hate for them to cancel it because I think that could really, really knock some things off. I'm sticking with my last thing. The 2021 basketball team rankings, not final. Number 1, Michigan. Number 2, Florida State. Like I said, it only takes 1 year for the basketball recruiting to turn around. Next year, number 1, Ohio State right now. And that's probably going to flip because they don't have any 5 stars. But you get some basketball schools that start out recruiting some of the blue bloods in basketball, and there's only 5 guys that can play at a time. That sport can turn real quick. So that's my final thing. I wonder how much the TV money is really going to start to kick in, and if Notre Dame will finally bend the knee and join the ACC because of it. But thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.